Hello, YouTubers out there. This is Jerry of the Movies with your host, Jerry Saravia. Now, my last show, I said I was going to discuss one of the Friday the 13th movies, and I will, but right now I want to discuss something else. Now, normally I don't go really out of my way to criticize someone else's review of another movie, unless, of course, they have a wrong-headed approach or whatever, but it's not really my thing to do that. I just try to write my own reviews with my own opinions, and although I might cite someone else's review in comparison, I typically keep it low-key and try really to bring out my opinion. But this one I wanted to talk about for a while now. Apparently it was taken down from YouTube, and there is one other review of it. And this is from Alex Jones. Now, Alex Jones is, I'm sure some of you know, is an American radio host, author, and documentary filmmaker. He has his own show called The Alex Jones Show, based in Austin, Texas, and two websites, Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. He's a libertarian and a conservative, although many call him right-wing, but he rejects that label apparently. He believes in the New World Order and in conspiracies. Now, having said that, he did on his show a review of W, directed by Oliver Stone, of course, based on George W. Bush. And in the review, he stated that Oliver Stone sold out. He sold out to the system. He believes Oliver Stone perhaps is part of some sort of a conspiracy, which is odd because both of these guys have discussed conspiracy theories in the past. More so Alex Jones, believe it or not, who's I think a little more even extremist than Oliver Stone. Anyway, the conspiracy being that Oliver Stone now is making movies where political content may be there, but it's not as extremist as it once was. May not necessarily have a true leftist agenda, and conspiracies are not really part of the mainframe of his work anymore. And in exposing, a new world order through some sort of a microcosm in our society, whether it is a president of the United States or the government, CIA, FBI, or all of them above, all of the above. Now, W, which I did think was a good film, but it's not as good as some of Oliver Stone's earlier films, including Nixon, tries to not really offend the right and doesn't really try to offend the left. And I think that was by the design, because you have to remember he made this film on a low budget with about $25 million, and while the president was still in office. This was really the first time this has ever been done. And this is a risky, or it was a risky project, if you think about it. Because I don't know how many people back in 2008 were really interested, before Obama was elected, to see a movie about a president that I think many people really didn't have the highest of admiration for, being, of course, George W. Bush. So, now, the film is sympathetic towards President Bush and acknowledges some mistakes, but it doesn't acknowledge perhaps the mistakes that I think some people wanted, and in particular Alex Jones, and doesn't implicate him in some sort of a conspiracy theory with 9/11, which many 9/11 truthers believe in, and in particular Alex Jones. In other words, it's not the movie that the conspiracy theorists, I guess, wanted, which is what I think Alex Jones was saying. And now we have to backtrack a little bit. Alex Jones claims that Oliver Stone's past struggles, and also some of his personal life, in particular being arrested and pleading guilty to alcohol and drug charges in 1999. This is Oliver Stone we're talking about now. And that he was ordered into a rehab program, arrested again in May 27, 2005 for possession of an undisclosed illegal drug, and again, and for driving under the influence and possession of drugs, released the next day on a $15,000 bond. And in August 2005, Stone pled no contest and was fined $100. Now, the reason I mention all this is because Alex Jones claims that whoever it was that confronted Oliver Stone said, listen, you're going to make movies that appease people, that and please them, that you're not going to be trying to get into trouble anymore, or else we'll put you away forever. I guess at Guantanamo Bay, who knows? Now, Alex Jones didn't really reveal who it was that would have tried to set Oliver Stone up to make movies that are a little more mainstream, devoid of any sort of political content that enters the conspiracy theory realm. Now, the problem with Alex Jones is that perhaps he doesn't really truly understand Oliver Stone's career, because Oliver Stone has always been a provocateur, and that hasn't changed. So even doing a film like W is not really selling out, because although he perhaps maybe does sanitize the president a little, I'm not going to say he doesn't, he does, and you know, show some of the flaws and the stupidity of the president. And I think that was really the point of that movie. It's sort of like a comedy to a certain extent of a man who not many of us think very highly of. Um, but it's a risk to make a film like that, and it was a risk when he did it. Now, before W, Oliver Stone made World Trade Center back in 2006, and again, I guess Alex Jones felt, well, here was a movie, and I think a lot of people thought prior to the movie's release that he was going to make a film about the conspiracy theories that have circulated around that day, 9/11. And he did not. Oliver Stone didn't make that kind of movie. He made a movie about the police and the firemen who went in there and tried to save people's lives, which I think is a story needed to be told. And it's a story Oliver Stone did decide to tell, because back in the day, when he made Salvador, that exposed what was going on in that country, a country that had thought he was making a movie that was pro-Salvador, which in fact was just the opposite. And he also made Platoon, but Platoon wasn't really an anti-Vietnam War movie, technically. It was really more about what those soldiers went through. There was no conspiracy theory attached to that picture. And even, since then, aside from JFK, which is probably the most controversial film he ever made, um, that, it's not typical, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't take risks. He made Natural Born Killers. He did two more movies in the Vietnam saga, Born on the 4th of July, and Heaven and Earth, which fewer people have seen than those other two, Platoon and Born. But he's always taken risks. Any Given Sunday is a football movie, and it may not fit the typical Oliver Stone type of picture, but then neither does U-Turn, and both of those movies are not really, again, they're not political in that sense. Alexander was a risk. Here's a movie about a conqueror, and trying to show that he, was gay and all this other stuff, and so he's always taken risks. And since then, and in between, Oliver Stone did two films on Fidel Castro. One of them was called Commandant, which was technically a pro, I guess you could say, pro-Castro type of movie. And then he did another one, which is on American DVD. Commandant, by the way, was not, I think it may have been shown on cable, but I think they pulled it at the last minute. It's one of those that didn't quite make it because Cuba and all that kind of tough subject. But he did Looking for Fidel, which criticized Fidel Castro. Persona non grata, documentary on Israeli-Palestinian relations. So he's done some documentaries. In addition to South of the Border, about the rise of leftist progressive governments in Latin America, including Hugo Chavez, who passed away, and others. And then the series Untold History of the United States, which was initially called Secret History, and which, even has the gall to say that World War II was not so much a victory for the United States as it was for the Soviets. That the Soviets were really responsible for winning that war. Now, this doesn't sound like a man that's not taking risks, does it? I don't think so. So Alex Jones needs to really rethink things. Would W have been different if it had exposed, some of the more troubling issues about Bush's presidency? Perhaps. It's not the film he set out to do. it's sort of the flips, not the flip side, but it's sort of the equal to some extent of Nixon. Now, Nixon, for some people, was not really which was a 1995 film that Oliver Stone did with Anthony Hopkins, was not necessarily, a lot of people left that film kind of angry, and it wasn't a big hit because it wasn't too long prior to that Nixon himself had passed away. Um, there aren't that many ardent fans of Nixon either, so that was a risk. But it wasn't the last risk that he took in 1995. He's taken risks since then, and I don't think we expect anything more from Oliver Stone. I mean, yeah, he did a sequel to Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, but again, how many people were really, Wall Street itself was quite a movie that, was tough to get the financing to get made in the first place. Although it came a little easier because of Platoon. Um, he's not really selling out. I mean, Oliver Stone is not making Alvin and the Chipmunks. Oliver Stone doesn't make a superhero movie. Um, so then I could agree with Alex Jones on that. Did I say Oliver Stone? Yeah, I hope I said Oliver Stone's not making those type of movies to really sell himself short. That's what Alex Jones is, I think, had said. And so, yeah, I think he was wrong. Um, it's fine if, you know, I mean, W has its detractors, that picture, and there are some people that do like it. Was it that tough on the president? No, it wasn't. But I'm not sure, again, that was the film that Oliver Stone wanted to make, which was an angry, passionate plea to make sure we don't make this mistake again, to have a president like that, when I guess maybe some people feel Obama is the worst president of all time. So you take everything with a grain of salt. But Oliver Stone makes the films that he wants to make. If he's going to make other people's movies, he probably would have quit by now. So he's doing what he wants to do. And the documentaries prove it. Anything post-Nixon will show that. So in regards to 9/11, I don't know what it is that he really believes. But JFK was a film that certainly did indulge in a lot of conspiracy theories regarding the assassination of John F. Kennedy, um, many of which I think do have some credence. I'll say that. Some which, were. It was a film designed to expose all the theories and then settle on the most important one, which was, why was this man assassinated? I think that's what that film was really about. Um, but I don't think he sees a conspiracy theory in everything, and that may piss off Alex Jones and all his compatriots and followers, but that's just too damn bad. It's the way I look at it. So that's all I got to say on that subject. And this is Jerry's Movies with your host Jerry Saravia, signing off.